So I came across a story of a Sunday school teacher who was trying to tell the story to her second graders about Easter, and was explaining how Jesus was crucified on Good Friday, and then was laid into the tomb, and that the tomb was then kind of closed with this huge rock, and that there was no way of coming in or out. And then waiting to share the excitement of the resurrection and the surprise of Easter morning, she asked, what do you think were Jesus' first words when he came bursting out of that tomb? Well, of course, as always, there's this one girl in the back raising her arms. She's like, I know. So the teacher said, okay, well, why don't you tell us? To which the girl said, when Jesus came out of that tomb on Easter morning alive, he said, ta-da! Christ is risen.
He is
risen indeed. Ta-da! Don't you just add that to that? But we obviously proclaim this good news on Easter morning, because it truly is a joyful news, and we share it with a lot of enthusiasm. But what do these Easter words really mean for us? How do they affect our lives? Do they at all? Obviously, there are many ways to look at Easter's story, or many different angles that we can take. And as I was contemplating this reading that we've just heard today, the one thing that kept kind of resonating with me was the new beginning. If someone would have asked me this year, what is Easter about? That's what I would tell them. Easter is about new beginning. I mean, just think about it. After Jesus' crucifixion, all of his disciples, the women included, think it's all over. I mean, that was it. The Jewish leaders are probably thinking, we've finally taken care of this Messiah. He's done. Pilate's probably thinking, I made a right decision. There won't be any riots. He is finished. And in fact, the last words that Jesus speaks before he breathes his last, he says, it is finished. And even though it might have seemed for some as a good ending, the reality of Easter was that for Jesus' followers, for all those who walked with him for over 3 years, it was not a good ending. They probably felt betrayed, disillusioned. I'm sure there was a lot of fear. What's going to happen to us now? There must have been a lot of guilt with everything that happened just before Jesus' death. In fact, as we think about the disciples and the women and everyone that knew Jesus, there must have been hurting in many ways. Have you ever been there in your life? Have you ever said those words, I'm done, I can't go any further, there's nothing I can do anymore, this is the end? And perhaps you said it when it comes to your career, your job, maybe about your marriage, or other family relationships. But perhaps you said it when it comes to the struggle with something that's been there in your life as long as you can remember. Maybe you said it when it comes to your faith life, and maybe even right now you're wondering, I'm not really even sure why. We all have experienced those kinds of moments when we feel that we've just hit that rock bottom, or the wall, or the big rock that bars bars away. That's life, right? Well, to a point. You know, I understand there's a lot of disillusionment and hopelessness out there, just like there was on that first Easter morning, when Jesus Christ was lying dead in the tomb. But the Easter story reminds us that we don't have to be completely overwhelmed, for we are Easter people. And the story of Easter is not the story of an end, but it is a story of hope. It is a story of joy, and it is a story of a new beginning. For when the women came to the tomb, the rock was no longer there, and neither was Jesus' body. And something had happened. And the message that the women received from the angels, yes, it is a shocking message, and yet it is a fairly simple message. Even the little kids can retell that message. Why do you look for the living among the dead? He's not here, he has risen. Remember how he had told you while he was still in Galilee that the Son of Man must be handed over to sinners and be crucified, and on the third day will be raised again? And what really jumped out at me this year as I read that story, for some reason it never really caught my attention, but I love what the angels told the women, how they start their message. Remember how he told you? And then Luke just simply says, and then they remembered his words. Now perhaps that's why we are here this morning, to be reminded once again of something that, for some of us we've been hearing since the early childhood. That Jesus died on the cross, but on the third day he rose again. And because he lives, we shall live also. And that even in the darkest moments of our lives, we won't have to fear the end. Because we have a living God right by our side. A resurrected Christ who gave us a promise that he will be with us till the end of the age. Now, do you feel, is that the message worth remembering? Now, let's say it all together. Christ is risen. He is risen indeed. Ta-da! The good news of a new beginning starts with these very words. And there truly was plenty of need for a new beginning. And Peter denying Jesus 3 times, a mother losing her son, disciples betraying Jesus just minutes after he washed their feet, women losing a dear friend and teacher. Can you relate to any of these? I'm sure we all can. And then the tomb is found empty, and Jesus is alive. And his resurrection truly changes the purpose and the future for all of his followers, even those who have denied him. This truly is just a beginning. It might have seemed like a lot of ends, but in reality, they all turn into new, hopeful, and exciting beginnings. For Christ is risen. He is risen indeed. I truly believe that this Easter message And I believe that deep in your hearts you know that, and that's why you are here this morning. This Easter morning, God offers us once again a new beginning and a new life. Not a perfect life, or a life without struggle or pain, but a life that is filled with hope and healing and love. A life that is filled with God's forgiveness for us, His grace,